Well, John Mateer has been the most talked about quarterback in all of college football over the last week or so, and for good reason. First, there was the social media clip of him ripping smelling salts before front squatting 315 pounds for 8 reps that caught fire online. Then it was Mateer's appearance at the Manning Passing Academy looking like Keanu Reeves from The Replacements, but if the movie was about Shane Falco leading a beach flag football team to a championship in 1986. And perhaps most notably, John Mateer's throwing motion and his mechanics have been in the spotlight of late due to a couple of recent stories detailing his hand injury from last year, the recovery, and Mateer's quest to become a more mechanically sound passer in 2026. Now, you should go read both of those stories. On3's Wilson Alexander had one of them, and Sooner Scoop's George Stoya had the other. And since both stories are behind paywalls, I'm not going to reveal too much here. But the most important takeaway from all of this, in my opinion, is that once we get to the 2026 season, John Mateer is going to look like John Mateer has always looked. The only notable difference is that he'll be healed from that thumb injury he suffered back in September of last year. Now, how do I know all of this? Well, in one of the stories, Mateer was quoted as saying that after his thumb injury happened last season, his grip on the football was so heavily compromised that it felt like throwing a baseball, quote, without your 2 fingers. To compensate for the lack of grip, Mateer had to hold the ball flatter and throw more sidearm because he couldn't get his arm over the top. Now, this stood out to me when I was reading the story because there's a bit of a problem, in my opinion. And that problem is that John Mateer is naturally a 3/4 arm passer of the football. It's all over his 2024 tape at Washington State. It's how he threw the football before the injury at Oklahoma last fall. It's how Mateer threw the football a few months ago in the OU spring game. And when I watched a handful of clips from the Manning Passing Academy, that's how Mateer threw the football, the way he always has. It's rare that Mateer ever truly goes straight up over the top, and I noticed that when he does that, it's typically when he's really putting a lot of oomph behind the ball and sending it deep down the field. Mateer's release and his arm angles, they're not going to look drastically different come 2026. And that's because there's simply not been nearly enough time for him to break his old throwing habits. Mateer is 22 years old. Let's say he's been throwing this way, throwing a football this way, since, let's say, his freshman year of high school 8 years ago. Could be longer than that, but for the purposes of this, we'll just say 8 years ago. That's thousands and thousands of throws every single year for 8 years. It's simply impossible for John Mateer to get enough reps, enough throws over the span of an offseason to break an 8-year habit. And the same goes for his base and his footwork, which has a tendency to be sloppy and inconsistent, which causes Mateer to throw off balance sometimes. And even sometimes he would do that little hop, a little jump when he throws the ball. His accuracy overall, not great. Kind of a low 60% completion percentage guy last season. Now, Mateer did spring ball working with quarterback coach John Kuzieski and offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle on cleaning up his footwork. But again, it's simply not reasonable to expect 8 years of habits to be broken in the matter of months. Mateer can probably clean up a lot of his mechanical issues in shorts and a t-shirt in the summertime with no pass rush. But muscle memory is a powerful thing. And once those pads do come on, once we get to August and September and October, and Mateer is back in the thick of things and his reactions have to be instantaneous, whatever long-form habits he's developed over those 8 years, we'll say, they're probably going to kick in. But here's the thing. I'm not as much worried about Mateer's mechanics as I am about Mateer being able to see it. I think that was his biggest issue in 2025, not fully understanding where he was supposed to go with the football on a down-to-down basis, rather. And how do you fix that? Get in the classroom, study film, become more familiar with opposing defensive tendencies, just become more of a student of the game. And it's not all on Mateer for this. It's mostly on Ben Arbuckle. He's got to make sure that Mateer has down his offense about as well as possible come 2026. OU will go as John Mateer goes in 2026. And if Mateer is really good, then the Sooners are going to win a lot of football games and have a chance to get to where they want to go. If Mateer is fair to middling, then Oklahoma's defense is going to have to be elite again. And that's just for the Sooners to have any shot at double-digit wins in 2026. I'm Lee Benson. This is West of Everest. And hey, if you're new here, thanks for listening and thanks for watching the show. Here at West of Everest, we aim to bring you authentic, thoughtful, and nuanced opinions on OU football and the world of college football so that you are the most knowledgeable OU fan in your group chat. We're trying to grow the show. We're trying to grow the community, if you will. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please follow West of Everest on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Basically, subscribe and follow wherever you can so you don't miss an episode. All right, let's get the show going. Coming up, we'll get Grant's take on all the John Mateer news of late. We've got Friday Night Lights for OU's season opener on the books. We'll try to make sense of the NCAA's attempt at new eligibility rules. We hit it on that a little bit at the end of our last show. We have a little bit more time today, so we'll touch on that here a bit today. And we may have to have some sort of a show correction segment to clean things up from our following episode, from the episode last week. Grant, what do you think about that?
Yeah, we're probably going to need to do that. Definitely. Maybe some mistakes were made, maybe a little bit ones. I wasn't the one who made mistakes, obviously. Definitely not. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I do want to say I felt stupid as I was listening back. I did make a massive mistake on the last show, and I'll get to it right now. I said we were talking about tight ends in the blocking game, in the run blocking game, and I said 31 personnel, as in lots of tight ends, and that's not right. That's a lot of running backs. It's 13 personnel, I meant to say. I guess I had audio dyslexia or something, so huge mistake on my part. 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends on the field. Not 31. That's like Army, Navy stuff. That's a lot of running backs on the field.
That's like 31 personnel is like diamond formation stuff.
Yeah, that was very embarrassing on me. So obviously will be the most embarrassing correction we make on this show, I would imagine, today. Before we jump into the John Mateer stuff, though, I do want to say we've jumped back onto YouTube. First time we're really intentionally trying to grow the YouTube channel. And thank you to everyone out there who is finding us for the first time. And we've had some people on YouTube say, hey, who are you guys? And that's the thing, is we're so used to our small community that have been listening to us for almost 10 years, know who we are. But as we're getting new people, we thought, okay, that's a good point. Like, we got to maybe reintroduce ourselves. So I'm Lee Benson. That's Grant Benson. Quickly, my background. Currently, I'm somebody that is not in the sports media, but I used to. I had over 11 years in sports, in local sports, television news. Most recently, I had 6 years at News 9 in Oklahoma City, and I did cover OU football for those 6 years. I was able to go to all the games, most of the games, all the home games, cover the team on a day-to-day basis. When it worked out, I mean, it wasn't my only beat. We had to cover a lot of other things too. So I got pretty close to the team doing that. And then in 2022, I got out of the news media business and went into a different type of career, but we've still been doing the podcast ever since. And so Grant is somebody, and I'll let him talk about himself briefly too, but he has not been in the media, but he might as well be. He's been in the OU media, if you will, since we have been doing this show for almost 10 years now. And so Grant, your background, you're more of you've always been more of the fan side of this podcast.
Yeah, that's always been sort of the hook of the show. You're not in the media anymore, but that was always kind of the idea of it, is that you are the sort of level-headed, responsible, big J journalist guy. I'm the fan in the equation. And that's still kind of the push and pull of the show, although you do have a little bit more freedom now that you're not literally on the beat of the team anymore. So you can sort of open up a vein more so in this sense. But I think also one of the most interesting things about our show is that you are right in the backyard of OU. I mean, you live in the Oklahoma City metro area, whereas I'm in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, which kind of gives a different look at everything. And so you live in a college football hotbed. I live in a place where college football is mostly an afterthought. The Minnesota Vikings are the big ticket in that town. And it's always just sort of interesting to get that push and pull, those different perspectives, because you're right in the middle of everything, whereas I have to look at it more from an outsider's perspective. And you'll hear it. I did go to OU for 1 year, but I graduated from the University of Minnesota, so I'm a Gopher. And so there will always be sort of backhanded, random Minnesota Golden Gopher references on this show too. which is always fun for me and presumably nobody else, except for maybe
Right.
the other 3 or 4 OU fans who also live in Minnesota, who I've never met before.
Yeah, and I also went to OU. I graduated from OU now many years ago. So, and we both, we've been to quite a few games. We've obviously been covering the team. We talked about it last show. I mean, over 25 years we've been consuming OU football. But as I mentioned on the last episode, I have seen our podcast analytics, and almost all of our listeners have been consuming and watching OU and following OU longer than us. So people that listen to this show and have been longtime listeners are experts on OU football. So we just try to do it justice here and try to be a sounding board for people. And we welcome new listeners. We're trying to, and new viewers now that we have the YouTube channel going on. We've been trying to post as much as possible on there and just trying to grow the show and trying to see how big we can get it. It's very low budget. There's not a whole lot of money involved with this podcast. As you know, we don't do any we don't do advertisers. I'm not going to say that that's always going to be the case. If things go to plan, who knows? Maybe advertisers will be in the cards. But if that's the case, we're still a ways away from that. As we try to grow the show, we try to show that, hey, we'll provide you guys authentic, thoughtful, nuanced opinions on OU football. And hopefully it makes you guys smarter and it makes you think of things that you otherwise did not think of when you listen to the other OU podcasts and read all the other OU reporters and whatnot. So we're just a part of the ecosystem, and we try to provide something a little bit different. And hopefully you enjoy and you stick with us. Anything else that you want to add?
This show is for the sickos. That's who we do this for. And I know, this is OU football. There's a lot of sickos out there. And so I think our goal is to find all of the OU football obsessed people out there and hopefully give at least a little bit different take and product from what you typically see from the OU podcast cinematic universe. And so, man, season 10, this is going to be, that is absurd. And so I honestly, the people who have been there since the very beginning, and I know there's quite a few of you, thank you. It's been crazy. You've seen Lee and I through, nearly 10 years of our life. There's a lot of growth, a lot of transition there. And that's the importance of that, the gravity of that is not lost on people like me. So I really, really do appreciate that.
All right, enough of the sentimental stuff and the introduction stuff. Let's talk OU football. And I talked about John Mateer in the opening take. I gave my thoughts. I still have some more thoughts to give, but I wanted to get that off the top. Over to you, Grant. So I'm sure you've seen all of the social media stuff. I know all the other OU podcasts have talked about Mateer. I listened to the Sooner Scoop guys and the OU Breakdown guys, our guys over at Through the Keyhole. Does it seem like to you that John Mateer was all of a sudden getting a ton of publicity over the last, 7 to 9 days or so?
It seems like it to me. I'm not the first person who's made this point. It could just be, that's just the nature of social media algorithms these days also. But also college football media, especially at the Manning Passing Academy, where all of the presumed kind of top quarterbacks in the country, they're all there. They're being mentors at the camp. That's just sort of where the national media of college football is at this point in time in the summer. And so I think that's where a lot of that came from. And you've heard other OU beats sort of try to make sense of this. And I think a lot of it has to come down to when you're in the media, nobody who's in the media enjoys boring interviews. That's not what it is. A lot of the times they're going to gravitate towards the players, the kids who are easier to talk to, who give you better sound bites, who give you more views whenever you put them on camera. And what I've gathered is a lot of people just kind of like talking to John Mateer. He's good in front of the camera. He gives you good bites. And he's also he's the quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, and he's an interesting guy. I think whoever the quarterback is at OU is always going to be an interesting story. We just had 2 years ago. I still remember the summer before Jackson Arnold was the presumed starter. There was a lot of talk about Jackson Arnold because he had just come off a year, I think the year prior, he had won Elite 11, and then he was also at the Manning Passing Academy, and he was doing really well, throwing to his guys against air and everything. And I remember lots of hype there. So I think part of it is that's just the territory that comes with being OU starting quarterback. And then I do think there's just a little bit of a John Mateer being a guy who is, I think, just naturally selected for, especially in this social media age. I think he does really well in that setting.
Because I went over all the the big reasons why it seemed like he was put in the spotlight. The OU football social media accounts put out that video of him front squatting, which you don't see every day. And, of course, I'm sure a lot of OU fans, it reminded us of the Jalen Hurts. That was a big thing, back in 2019 with him squatting a small village on his back. But that was back squatting. So there's that. And then all the pictures of him at the Manning Passing Academy. I know there was like some weird AI, like punched up versions of him, but ultimately, like he looked like, I described it like Keanu Reeves and The Replacements if it was an 80s movie about beach flag football. That's kind of what he looked like with like those 80s kind of Miguel Chavis style sunglasses and the hat on. So like that was all the fun stuff. And then there's the more like actual football pieces of news that came out with those stories about his mechanics. So of all of that, where do you want to start first? What interests you the most?
Let me bring up this front squatting video thing just because this is peak off-season hashtag content. I'm sorry, but I don't care about his squatting videos. Yes, I understand him doing the smelling salts and then tossing it at the camera. That definitely screams as the stupid young kids say these days. He's got a lot of aura. He got like an orange aura around him. That's what that's all about. But all it does is remind me back in the old like OU Insider days, not like OU Insider as it currently is. I'm talking about like OG, like the message board from the mid 2000s. That is no longer. There used to be sort of a meme in the off season where it would be some sort of rival Big 12 program, whether it be Texas or Texas A&M or Kansas State or whatever, and there would be some sort of picture from summer practice, summer workouts, or the beginning of fall practice of some guy that OU was going to be going against, and he was always just ripped up and just jacked and looks like he was about to go and just steal a bunch of people's souls. And the meme always was, "Look out, everybody! The opposing teams are lifting weights in the off season." And I'm like, that's all I can think of there. I was like, oh gosh, OU is for the first time ever lifting weights this offseason. Look out, college football world.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's peak. It's July. I guess that stuff came out in technically June. But it's we're all wanting more football. The thing is, it's not surprising that John Mateer is squatting. I mean, he came in, his legs are very big. We did a whole rewatch of Washington State from 2024. One of the big things that stood out to us, that's not typically something you look for in a quarterback, was like how big his lower body is. I mean, he's big, so it's not surprising he can squat a lot. He's pretty fast too. So yeah, that was it. But a lot of people, it's just easy social media content. What do you think about his look at the Manning Passing Academy? Do you think he looked pretty cool with the cut off sleeves and?
Well, I mean, yeah, he looks cool, but this is the same principle as any sort of like fashion trend or what anybody's wearing, or how it's like hot people look hot no matter what they do. John Mateer's a hot guy. Like, cut that up, put that on YouTube. He's a good looking dude. What do you want me to do? He's got the backward hat going, or he's got like the trucker hat going, and he's got
I think it was frontwards actually. Yeah.
Oh, it was frontwards. That's right. It's like, but he's got sort of like the he's got just the lettuce like kind of curling in his back, which always looks good. And so yeah, I mean, like I get it. Like the one thing that I didn't really understand is because I understand like all of the talk about his throwing motion and everything, and there's been some national stories written about it at this point in time. But I'm assuming you also saw the other social media clip that was going around. It was him throwing the ball, and it was from his behind, like from behind him. And I know Josh Pate had like a little viral clip where he was looking at it and he was sort of admiring the way the ball was coming out of his hand. And a lot of other people were like, gosh, this looks really good. Am I missing something? Or was I watching that? I was like, yeah, that's a guy who's very obviously trying to like fix his throwing motion. I thought it looked awkward coming out of his hand. I didn't think it but everyone was just sort of like, gosh, look at this, like the progress this guy is making. And I was like, guys, let's pump the brakes a little bit. I don't see why this is any sort of like extraordinary thing that is happening in front of me.
The video that you're talking about, I'm trying to find it right now, and if I can find it, I'll also play it since we have that ability. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think as I sit here, I know this is great podcasting. So here's the thing, and we can kind of get into your thoughts on this, but to me, he looks exactly the same. His release, everything, it just doesn't look particularly different to me. It, it looks the way he's always looked. He has a natural 3/4 arm motion, and a lot of times it's almost like he short arms the ball, like he's like a baseball player. And other times, even before the injury, and actually, you know what? Now that we're talking about it, I do have some just to kind of prove it, because I talked about how like this is what he looked like in the first half of last season before he got injured. This is what he looked like at 2024. Sometimes it looks like he's shot putting the ball every once in a while, depending on the type of throw he's trying to make. He very rarely ever just goes over the top. That's just not the way he throws the football. So it's just, we talked about it before last season when we were watching him in 2024 of how unorthodox his release looked and his mechanics and everything. And we talked about how OU fans, if they haven't watched much material, they're going to watch this guy and think, well, it's kind of goofy a lot of the times, like with a lot of the sidearm stuff. And so to me, all the videos I saw from Manning Passing Academy, whether angles from behind or whatever, to me, it all looked like John Mateer normal, like before he was hurt. And honestly, after he got hurt, he really didn't seem the way he threw the ball. It changed a little bit. You could tell like his velocity wasn't as great. It obviously changed because he talked about how he couldn't hold it the same way. But honestly, man, to me, watching last year, there wasn't that big of a difference, especially when he got towards the end of the season against LSU and against Alabama when there was more time that went by after his injury. So I think a lot of this is, it's him wanting to get better. But man, I think everything's going to look pretty much exactly the same in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. It depends on what happens when the Bullets are live and everything is real again. So I thought from that social media clip, I thought it did look a little bit more. It's still not over the top. It's still a 3/4 thing. But to me, the release looked a little bit more mechanical, and like it kind of looked unnatural to me. It looked like he was trying very, very hard, to implement sort of the new mechanics that he's learned. So we'll see. I tend to agree with you in your opening take that when everything is, when the game is fast, and he's probably very likely going to revert back to his instincts in that sense. And we'll see. Yeah. See, I did when I watched the other social media clip, which to me, it's all about can he make steps in other parts of his game that you've brought up too. Is does he see it better? Is he able to diagnose stuff pre-snap a lot better this season? And I think a lot of that has to do with it. Ben Arbuckle's got to do a better job too. I keep hearing a lot of people talk about how he's, there was guys open all the time last year and he just wasn't seeing them. And I do think, of course, to an extent, that's a John Mateer problem, but I do think that that's a Ben Arbuckle thing too. It's like if your guy's not seeing it where it's supposed to go, then that's on Ben Arbuckle. He's got to get better with that, and he's got to call his offense with that in mind. So we'll see. I don't go. Yeah, man, that one's like sidearm.
So yeah, so those listening on the podcast, we're playing highlights from the Illinois State game. So John Mateer's debut at OU, and just to give you an idea, this is him coming in, obviously totally fresh into his first season at OU, and just to remind you all what his arm angle and his release looked like. And this is what it looked like for basically the entire year, certainly up until he got injured, and I think up until even after he got hurt. When he's putting a little air under the ball, when he's going a little bit deep, he'll rear back and he'll go a little bit more over the top. But for the most part, it's 3/4, and then he'll sling it here and there, and he'll try to create maybe a window that he can throw like a slant through, and he'll make it more sidearm. Looking at the seam ball, the Canik, that's straight 3/4, just kind of, it's almost a Josh Allen story where some coach or expert helped him over some time, and John Mateer worked with that guy. But in my mind, if that was a success for Josh Allen, then great. But I suppose I would imagine that was over a matter of years and not between one off season to the next. And Josh Allen's refined his game over, he's been in the league now for almost 7 or 8 years. So it's when he got out, he was pretty raw. It's just, I don't think you're going to see a whole big of a difference between John Mateer in the matter of him trying to do all these things in 3 or 4 months. It takes a long time to form a new habit, and it's not really about the time. It's just about the number of reps. And I just don't think that, like, John Mateer would have to throw the ball like 1,000 times a day, like in the last 3 months, probably, to equal the amount of actual reps he had in the 8 years or so before he got to Oklahoma of throwing the football.
Yeah, I think it's much more. I think it's much more realistic to expect improvement in how he navigates the pocket, because we've actually had, just in recent history, we've had that exact thing happen with a quarterback who, like in Dylan Gabriel, he made huge strides in his second season at OU in terms of just navigating the pocket. Because one of my things about last season, especially talking about Oklahoma's offensive line, is that I think from, comparing it to 2024, where they were the worst in pass protection, I had probably ever seen since I've been covering, or since I've been following the team over the course of 25 years, outside of maybe like 2001, 2002, right after they won the national title. But I thought Oklahoma was pretty good last year in pass protection. I did not like, their tackles were very rarely just getting beat right at the jump like they were a lot of the time in 2024. I thought they did a really good job in that sense. Whenever OU was struggling with protecting the quarterback, I thought a lot of the time it was on Mateer, because he just wasn't navigating the pocket well. He was drifting into pressure, and that's something that he can absolutely get better at. And I do think that's one thing where I think it's a reasonable expectation from this fan base to say, yeah, we expect you to be a lot better in that regard going into the season. Okay, you got his actual. See, I see a much. Lee showing the social media clip of his new sort of release. I see this as much more compact, much like closer to the ear. Like his sidearm motion is not as wide, whereas this now I think is just a much more shorter release. But I watched that and I'm just like, yeah, that's a quarterback throwing the ball. I don't necessarily see like oh gosh, that's just utterly gorgeous.
So I see what you're saying on that, and as I'm watching it, here's the thing on this: he's throwing it straight, like in the middle of the field, if you will. If this was actual pass, I'd like to see him go right or left, because I think if he did, he might kind of go back to his old mechanics there. Because yeah, it's really easy to throw the ball straight and kind of get it closer to your ear when you're just in shorts and a t-shirt. But whenever things start happening, will he make it consistent? And honestly, though, I think even I guess I paused. I can keep playing it, but. Yes, that does look, I guess, a little bit different from some of the Illinois State stuff, but not enough to where it's super drastic. And he's still kind of letting it go. He releases it kind of low. It's just part of his style, and the ball kind of just explodes out of his hands. But yeah, I see it's a little different, but is it enough to get worked up over? Of course not.
So we'll see. It's still, I mean, and I, part of me understands why a lot of people are talking about him, right? Because he's gonna dictate whether OU can take the next step this season. It's pretty much all on his shoulders, as we kind of said whenever we have podcasted in the offseason. It's like, well, there's going to be a lot of ink spilled, a lot of words spoken over the airways all the way up until September of this season, or September at the beginning of the season, about what has to happen for Oklahoma to get better. And you and I have just summarized it very, very simply. John Mateer's got to get a lot better. That's it. He is going to dictate where they go this season. The defense is going to be very good again. We know that. I think that's you can cinch that up. Mateer's got to be better. He's just got to be better. He's got to be more dynamic. He's got to hit more stuff down the field. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to pick his spots to run better. It's all going to be about him, and in concert with Ben Arbuckle as well, because I still think, for as many as many people will say that, man, Arbuckle was getting guys open last year. I sure didn't see it when I was watching. We don't have access to the All-22, but I was not seeing a whole lot of guys open last year. So Arbuckle's got to do. Arbuckle was much better than the Luttrell and Joe John Finley regime in 2024, but I thought Arbuckle a lot of the times last year was not necessarily what OU thought that they were getting.
By the way, that clip we were showing that we were just commenting on is from Wilson Alexander. He was the one that wrote the On3 story about John Mateer. I think that showed up on the clip when we were showing it. I did find a YouTube clip, and I mentioned it in my opening take about the Manning Passing Academy. Yeah, there are some of those clips you just saw from Wilson Alexander. But I did see on YouTube, I got to give credit to On Texas Football. They had a long cut up of a lot of the quarterbacks that were there throwing it around. And so I went and kind of watched John Mateer throw. And just because we can do it, I figure, I'm not sure if you've seen this yet, but here is one version. Here's one John Mateer throw. And I really appreciate how they even label it John Mateer, so it was easy to scrub through. So let's see if this looks any different. Now, of course, you can't really tell because it's a little 12-yard curl. Drew Mestamaker, Marcel Reed.
This stuff is also, I gotta be honest, this is, to me, this is just content. You can't.
It is, but we're talking about here's Mateer again.
You watch the cut up. You watch the cut up of this. And the only person to miss a throw is Arch Manning. And I'm of all of the guys
this is different
who they show, of all of the guys who they show in this, the only guy, there are two guys in this who were better than Arch Manning last year, and it was CJ Carr and who else? It was literally the second or third guy past that.
Mestamaker?
Marcel Mestamaker,
Reed?
He gets the not Marcel Reed. There's Mestamaker. I'm curious about Mestamaker this year.
Julian Sayin?
Oh, Sayin. Yes, Sayin. Thank you.
Gunnar Stockton. See, I mean, this guy's right over the top. Stockton right over the top. I mean, that's.
But this is against air. I just.
No, it is.
This is
because we're talking
this
about
is full on
Mateer's release.
Starved football contact. This stuff's meaningless to me. It's meaningless.
So here's the deep throw from Mateer. This is where he goes straight over the top. Just misses the guy. I go back.
We're only 2 years removed from Jackson Arnold, in this setting, being by far the most impressive quarterback. So this stuff just doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter, but because John Mateer's throwing motion and his mechanics have been talked about, this is why I think this does kind of matter a little bit to say, okay, what did he look like most recently? And that's why I wanted to show it on the show.
And also, when I watched this, because I remember watching this cut up, and I mean, physically, in terms of how the ball comes out and who just looks as the most impressive person in all this was Kamario Taylor from Mississippi State. He seems to be the most talented of all of the people, the most physically gifted, just based off of this. But like I said, I don't think really you can make any sort of conclusions, from stuff like this against air. It just doesn't matter.
Well, there we go. There's some John Mateer at Manning Passing Academy. Appreciate the video. Again, that was, who was that? On Texas Football. Gotta give him credit. Giving us some content there.
Another thing that he going back to what he can reasonably improve on. I think a big part of his quote unquote not seeing it nature from a season ago was he was awful decision making in the RPO, and it kind of seemed like he struggled with counting the guys who were in the box. That was the area
to Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, that was the area where I was just he's just not. I mean, he's pulling it to throw when he should obviously be giving it, and then vice versa. It's that. That's something that I just feel like you should be able to clean up. Honestly, in a week of practice, I don't understand how you can't see that very well. But we'll see. He's got to get better in that sense. But the good news is that college football history is littered with guys who got to their last season of playing college football, their third year of starting. They've taken a lot of reps, and then they just get better just because they've seen it way, way more. That doesn't mean that he's going to be Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray or even Dylan Gabriel. But he can be a really good player. He's just got to take tiny little steps, and he's got to be consistent with it.
Too bad I didn't go against the Washington State schedule from 2 years ago. I think it'd be a lot easier for him to take those steps, but it's hard. It's not easy. All right. Before we get on to the next part of the show, I want to acknowledge that we have seen some incredible growth on the West of Everest YouTube channel in the last week, which it's amazing. You listening in your car or watching the show on TV or on your phone, on YouTube or on Spotify, you're the heroes of this podcast. We love that you're here. And Grant and I want you all to help us grow the show. We want to help you as well become a more knowledgeable OU fan, so that in your group chat, you just start providing all these hot takes, these great opinions that they had never thought of before. Again, it's about authentic, thoughtful, nuanced opinions about Oklahoma football and the world of college football. So please help us grow the community. Follow the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, leave a 5-star rating and subscribe to the YouTube channel where you'll find full episodes, video clips, and shorts from the podcast. And follow along on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter X. Follow West of Everest on all of those platforms. So new news that came out this week. Oklahoma's season opener is moved up a day, similar to a couple of seasons ago when the Sooners began the year on a Friday night. Well, they're going to be doing it again against UTEP. 2 years ago, it was against Temple in Jackson Arnold's debut. This year, it's going to be OU UTEP on Friday, September the 4th at 7 o'clock. And I got to say, I somewhat appreciated new athletic director Roger Denny's statement on this, and I'll bring it up real quick. He didn't really try to sugarcoat it. Roger Denny said, quote, "Moving our home opener against UTEP to Friday night presents a unique opportunity to showcase Oklahoma football." Okay, that's pretty generic. But then after that, Denny said, "The game's going to be streamed digitally, which allows us to be more intentional about selecting a date and kickoff time. Historically, early season games in Oklahoma can present significant heat challenges, and a Friday night kickoff provides a more comfortable environment for our student athletes, fans, and game day staff. It also allows our fans to enjoy an electric atmosphere in Norman while making the most of the remainder of Labor Day weekend. We're excited to welcome Sooner Nation back to Owen Field for a rare Friday night game under the lights." End quote. And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I apologize if you don't know the answer to this question, but I want to say either it was just pointed out by a lot of smart people, or maybe it was Denny or somebody within the athletic department that also acknowledged that, hey, moving the game up a day gives Oklahoma an extra day of rest ahead of week 2's road challenge at Michigan, which also potentially can help out Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably why they're doing this. That's probably the number one reason. It wasn't because I remember from 2 years ago when they moved that Temple game up to a Friday night, that seemed to be a pretty transparent, because that game was on ESPN. So that was just like transparent, like this is OU football and we want, a primetime slot all to ourselves. And so that we can have as many eyeballs on us as humanly possible. This game is on, the SEC Network Plus, which is essentially pay-per-view at this point in time. So that's not the reason they're doing this. I think it's probably a bang of they want the extra day for rest against Michigan, which I think is sound logic. And then also they probably were going to have to play in the middle of the afternoon on that Saturday, which in Oklahoma at that time of the year is it sucks for everybody. It's hot for the players, hot for the people in the stands. And so I think in that sense, it obviously makes a lot of sense. There's going to be people who are going to bristle at the Friday night lights of it all in terms of the high school football. That is one of those things where it's like, I get that. Of course, like that's kind of just like built into everything. Although I do find it interesting because, we grew up in Minnesota and they play the very first week of the season. I guess I don't know if this is the first week of the season for Oklahoma high school football. But the week going into that Labor Day weekend in Minnesota, all of the games are on Thursday. And it's for the idea of, like, I think the idea is that just a lot of people go out of town that weekend and they give them, a travel day on Friday and Saturday and whatnot. And so my assumption is that probably a lot of schools will move that week's game up to Thursday for high school football, purposes. But that's not a huge concern, as far as where I'm at in my life right now. My only thing with this move that I don't like, and this is trivial, this is dumb, this doesn't mean anything, this is me just being just a superstitious guy, and I kind of wish maybe they thought about it, but I can't help but thinking they did this back in 2024. They moved up the Temple game, and that was the worst OU team I've seen in my lifetime. That since I've been following the team, and I'm just like, yeah. And while I think it's very, very unlikely that this team is anywhere near as bad or to that, to that level of quality as the 24 team. Part of me is just kind of like, I don't like the 1-to-1 comparison there. I was just like, oh, well, the last time we did this, gross. That was a game OU won by like 40 some odd points. And we got on this podcast afterwards and we're just kind of like, you can listen, you can hear it in my voice at the time, just like depressed because it hadn't hit me. I was like, they might be bad. This might be a bad team.
Yeah, and we've covered it many a times on this show, and we do pat ourselves on the back on that one because you and I jumped on and we immediately recorded the podcast because I always try to get back to Minnesota on Labor Day weekend, and it was a Friday night game, and we watched it at your place. And then we were able to immediately jump on and podcast. And as the game was going on, we were watching and we obviously talking amongst ourselves like, this offense is bad. I mean, this is not good. And of all the different OU media analysts, pundits, writers that cover the team, man, this is very self-serving and self-sucking, but nobody else was sounding the alarm like we were. And we were right. I mean, the offense was awful. And there's a whole lot of like, well, you never know. Like, I was definitely a little bit more positive than you were. But at the same time, though, there was still a lot of, like, the yards per play was brutal. I mean, there wasn't really any big, there was like one or two explosive plays the entire game against Temple, who was awful.
Yeah, it was,
it seemed like people didn't really know, it seemed like a lot of people in OU world didn't quite grasp how bad it was until the next week against Houston. Which,
yeah, I mean, taking
where were you guys the week before?
Yeah, taking the opponent into account, that game, that was pound for pound the worst offensive performance since the late 90s and for the program. I mean, it was that bad. So, that is superstition. It's superstition. There is nothing in the stars in the universe that is saying that is also going to, be what happens here. But human beings also have like an instinct to look at patterns and everything. And this is where it gives me a little bit of heartburn that they're doing this. So, and actually, like, I'm glad that you bring up, us just immediately being like, this is bad. Like the first game against Illinois State last year also pretended, a lot of issues going because they were bad against Illinois State last year. The offense was not good. It was better than it had been the previous year. But that first game against Illinois State foreshadowed a lot of issues that the offense had.
Mainly in the running game, because it was a lot more explosive in the air. I mean, Mateer had a good game. He threw for over 300 and something yards and had 3 touchdowns or something like that. So I think the passing attack through the air was definitely a lot better. But the big issue was the running game. I mean, they couldn't really figure out how to run the ball against Illinois State. Granted, Illinois State ended up being one of the best teams in FCS football. They made it to the national championship game.
Oh, they got hot. They weren't that. They just got hot at the end of the year. But
still counts.
So
man.
We'll see. I mean, they're playing a bad, UTEP in the season opener this year. UTEP's bad. UTEP is a really bad team, and that's one thing to look at. If OU does not just move the ball up and down the field on them easily, it doesn't absolutely mean that the offense is in trouble, but it would definitely suggest that they haven't made the leaps that they want. Whereas, like, if OU's offense has made the strides that we hope that they've made in the offseason, I mean, they need to score on like 90% of their possessions against UTEP. It should be like clockwork, bang bang, easy, and we'll see.
That's the thing, is the people that listen to this podcast, that watch OU football, that know OU football, we've mentioned it before. If you listen to this podcast, you're probably an expert in OU football. You've been following this team for 25, 30, 40 years potentially. We've seen excellent, amazing offenses in the recent past. Lincoln Riley put together a bunch of awesome offenses. We know what it looked like whenever a good offense, an elite offense, would be able to just run through these inferior defenses. And we took it for granted. How could you not? I mean, it was Baker Mayfield's and Kyler Murray's and Jalen Hurts and then Caleb Williams and even at sometimes Spencer Rattler. I mean, just making it look very easy. And then once Lincoln's been gone, granted, Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel, that offense at times made things look pretty easy against appropriate competition. But certainly since last year, or I guess certainly since 2024, since 2024. I mean, the last 2 seasons, it's been not what we were grown accustomed to. And so Just think back to what it was like watching in 2017 and 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I mean, whenever Oklahoma's offense would go up against bad teams, they would move the ball so easily and score so easily. That's what it needs to look like if Oklahoma's offense is going to be back into the upper echelon of college football.
Agreed.
All right. So we hit on this a little bit in the last show, and we'll hit on just briefly again, just the whole eligibility thing. The NCAA D1 cabinet approving that 5-year age-based eligibility model, where now people are already trying to sue, and it may not even go into it. I mean, the way I look at it, the whole idea behind this is the NCAA is trying to get away from getting sued. They're trying to make it a lot more easy to understand, so they're not having to deal with potential nuance when it comes to these waiver cases. And should this guy get an extra year? Should this girl get an extra year? Is that a medical redshirt? Is that clearly NCAA is trying to get away from that? I've been on the record of saying, like, as far as the eligibility rules go, the way the NCAA has written the rules, to me, it doesn't seem that complicated. But like any good lawyer, any good legal mind can always poke holes in things, and that's what's happened over the last 6 months. And that's where all these eligibility cases were coming through. Most of them, it seems like, have prevailed. I shouldn't say most. I mean, a good amount of them have prevailed. Some of them have not prevailed. But it seems like the NCAA is trying to make their rule a lot more ironclad to where you can't really test it or push back against it. At the same time, the idea, again, just to reiterate, is that athletes in all sports will get 5 years of eligibility over 5 seasons once their college eligibility clock begins, which is either the initial full-time enrollment at a school or the start of an academic year following their 19th birthday, whichever comes first. So another thing that this will do is this will prevent people that, I think there are some small exceptions, but this will basically prevent people that don't, let's say they don't go to college right away out of high school. And then they become like 24 and they're like, yeah, let's go to college. And some team wants to actually like sign them, bring them in. Like their eligibility based on these rules would have started at their 19th birthday. So they're going to be losing out on all this eligibility time, even though they're not even playing in college, which I've been on the record again on this. Is like, I think if you have not played college sports and you're 30 years old and some team wants you and you're good enough, I think you should be able to go play. I think you should, but a lot of people think that's crazy. Maybe that's just my old thought of like, man, it'd be so cool to keep playing if you could. But this idea is so that there's not older people playing in college sports. It's limited to a certain age group, which is, in general, that's kind of like the unwritten rule of college sports. It's supposed to be for college age kids. So I get what they're doing here, but I generally don't like this. I don't like this rule because, and the reasoning probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but here's why I don't like it. They're basically trying to get rid of red shirts. And so the thought is like a lot of players, when they start as a freshman, a lot of players don't play right away. A lot of people they got to get better, and that's typically a redshirt year. So the NCAA is probably thinking like, well, a lot of these freshmen are going to come in. They won't play anyways their first year. So that'll kind of be like an unofficial redshirt year. And then they'll still get 4 more years of eligibility to play, which is typical. I don't like it because if someone's good enough, you can play up to 5 years of college. And this could totally mess up the record books. Like it's just, you could get these guys that have this ability to play 5 years. And I get that there's a lot of players in the last handful of years that have gotten the ability to play 5 years and stuff because of COVID and then maybe some weird injury stuff. So I get that. It's just now you're going to be putting it into the rule book of like, yeah, moving forward, you can play up to 5 years. And I mean, maybe it shouldn't matter that much with the record books. It just kind of seems off to me that student athletes can play 5 years when really you're only supposed to play 4. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's a good rule. It's a good rule because one of my things is simple rules for complex institutions, whether that be college football, whether that be just our society in general. It's a lot easier to litigate things when they are straightforward and simple. And the redshirt rules, along with COVID and giving out exceptions to all of that, was very, very convoluted, and it did open the NCAA up to a lot of court challenges. And it, as we saw with the Owen Heineke thing, it opens them up to situations where they're not applying their rules in a consistent manner. And it's because it's hard to apply rules in a consistent manner when the rules are convoluted and there's lots of different little things that you can carve out there. And so I think this is an attempt to ameliorate that, to make things just a lot a lot more simple. And it's one of those things where it's like you're given a little and you're also taking a little as well. And so you're saying, hey, we're not giving you any of these like medical redshirts anymore. That's gone. That's out the window. But you can play for 5 years. And I think that's just like your sort of like compromise way of giving back a little bit more to the players who now can make money. And so that's 5 years of, and as I've said many times on this podcast, there are, a vast, vast majority of college football players are not going to be able to go on and play professional sports. And so this is like one of those things where you can, for a lot of these guys, that 5-year window, this may be your best earning potential in your entire life. And so this is one way to just sort of allowing them to get a little bit too, while taking away a lot of those medical redshirt exceptions that I think has just thrown a wrench and made everything just way more complicated, along with COVID, obviously. The one thing I'm interested about here, as I've said, and we talked about this last week too, is it's been established in the courts throughout the country in a lot of different cases that the NCAA cannot legally enforce their rules. And I said this, and so I don't think this is, without a CBA, this is going to be, it's going to be unenforceable. It's not going to be all at once. It's always going to be a little bit of a drip. People are going to test the bounds of it, and then it's not going to be, all at once. But the whole idea of there being eligibility rules in college football is going to be challenged by some sort of program and player. It's just who is going to be brave enough to be the first ones to do it. Because as we've seen, you just need to find a friendly lawyer, and it's all in civil court. And so you just have to make a 51% reasonable argument, and there you go. You got it. You got the injunction. And so we'll see. I don't know. There's going to be a collective bargaining agreement in college football at some point in time. I wouldn't even want to predict when that's going to happen. But this stuff like this is going to be litigated and relitigated a ton of times. And so as much as I like this rule, I do not think it is here for long without a CBA.
Yeah, I think you hit on another reason why this is interesting is because, can the NCAA even enforce it based off of what's happened over the last 5-6 months or so with all these court cases? That's the thing is, people keep saying like that's the only way. And if that is the only way that they can, the NCAA can enforce this stuff, because that's the pro model. That's how the NFL and the NBA and the MLB is able to enforce all their rules, I guess, without being taken to court by the player. Then maybe. But also, what if there's not going to be a CBA? What if the players are fine with having the ability to just push back and press, and then effectively the NCAA just doesn't have any? They just dissolve. It's just not. Like, everybody essentially just says, like, what is the point of even trying to follow these rules if we can push back on them and they're not really enforceable?
I don't think there's any way around. I mean, if the NCAA dissolves, then it'll just be the SEC and the Big Ten that are running everything, and they're going to want. And if it's just them, it's a lot easier to get a CBA on a conference by conference basis rather than a huge 130 team institutional thing. So,
I guess my question is do players want a collective bargaining agreement? Like, I wonder if NFL players and NBA players, like, do they like having this, like, the union? Is that, I mean, if they all had to vote, like, it's just kind of the way it's been. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do. I just don't know enough about how it works. I hear stories about how, like, the NFL players, like, sure, there's positives to it, but like, I'll listen to Brady Quinn has a radio show on Fox Sports Radio, and he'll talk about how he can't believe how the players union doesn't push harder for, especially it's coming up a lot this time of year right now with all the FIFA World Cup action, and all these NFL stadiums have brought in actual grass. And Brady Quinn will talk about how, like, he can't believe that the players haven't pushed harder to get the owners to make natural grass on every single playing surface and every single field, because it helps. It reduces the chance of injuries and whatnot. And that's something that the players haven't pushed for, because maybe they've agreed to other things. But again, maybe I'm not taking into account. Maybe I guess they have to. Maybe it's something that they have to with the owners too. I just don't know enough about the way it works. So it's to me, it's very complicated.
No, I mean, in terms of, if you're looking at it just based off of how much, how much are you able to like earn over the course of your college career, then yeah, I think it's probably better if there isn't a union for the players. But I also do think that isn't going to be the case for everybody. Like I've always said, like the people right now who are making the most money in NIL and college football, no, and from a purely financial, economical perspective, it would not be good for them to have a CBA. Look at Major League Baseball right now. There's a collective bargaining agreement there, but there's no salary cap, and because there's no salary cap, Major League Baseball by far has the biggest contracts of any of the professional sports, despite it not being the biggest one. Like if there was no salary cap in the NFL, like the NFL salaries would be astronomical. I mean, it would be insane how much money like some of those guys would make. But there's also there's good things about that sort of things too. Like especially with the CBA, there's different protections there, whether it be because of like health benefits after you retire, or there's stuff with pensions and everything too. And so that would be like I think for the average college football player, a CBA with protections and a revenue sharing agreement would probably be better for the average college football player. For the Trinidad Chamblises of the world, probably not. That's something that would hurt his pocket more than it would hurt, random, who's the second string center for Owen Hollenbeck.
Okay. All right. I think we've touched on this enough. This is a complicated issue that we can stretch it into 5-10 minutes in the summertime, but obviously when the season begins, it's something that nobody will be thinking about. Okay, so let's move on to the show corrections portion of the podcast. And there's a couple of show corrections. I made one at the start of the show, so I own that one. The 31 personnel, when I should have said 13 personnel. Just a big goof on my part. So we're going to start with, there was a discussion, we were talking about the defense and how Oklahoma's defense, you said you've been listening to a lot of the national podcasts and reading a lot of the national writers, and you get the sense that maybe OU's defense is a bit underrated. And because David Stone's being topped up quite a bit, maybe Oklahoma's underrated. And then you brought up how much you love Kip Lewis, and you said a lot of great things about Kip Lewis. Well, part of that discussion led to something that you said, and I'm going to play what you said, and then I'll let you react to it. I put that up. Hold on. I suppose I didn't time that the best. So did you hear that, by the way? I can't.
No.
Okay, good. All right, let's try this again. So we're going to share it. All right, so this is from last week's show.
I feel like I'm on an island of one of this, of just how I think Kip Lewis is just an outstanding player. I think he's so good. I think he's the program's best linebacker since Rufus Alexander over 20 years ago.
Care to maybe edit that or change anything on? And this is on me too, but I didn't change anything.
I mean, when you're recording a lot of podcasts, sometimes you're firing from the hip, and sometimes you do forget about stuff. Hey, I'm not a young man anymore. I'm getting a lot older. I forget a lot more stuff. I remember when I first started doing this 10 years ago, I was like one guy, if I'd listen to a podcast and somebody would forget a name, I'd be one of those guys like, screaming at the radio, like, how can you forget that? And it comes for us all. It comes for us all. It's coming for me now. And so with that, and just like another, hat tip to our friend Brady Trantham, who brought this up. But yeah, I mean, I obviously have to apologize to ex-OU GM Curtis Lofton, who very obviously has had this century, has probably had the best single season for an OU linebacker this century so far. So I will amend that by saying I think Kip Lewis is the best linebacker at OU since 2007, Curtis Lofton.
Yeah, that also credit to Jordan on the West of Everest Facebook page. Jordan had a comment on the video that we posted of that, and Jordan also pointed out that Curtis Lofton is the guy that you forgot about. I didn't mention him either. Now, to your credit, I think if we're going to try to massage this, Kip Lewis has put together back-to-back really great seasons and could put together a third one. over a longer period of time, Kip Lewis has been more effective than Curtis Lofton because Lofton only had really the one good season. I know he played a little bit the year before, but he didn't have as much impact, but he was an All-American in 2007. Lofton was. So yeah, I think he gets the award for best linebacker in the last 20 years. All right, another one.
Yeah, that is an oversight that I regret. I regret the air, everybody.
I regret the air. All right, we have another clip from last week. Play it.
I have a degree from the University of Minnesota. I assure you in the 80s, they weren't paying players. Promise you that.
Well, okay, so I heard you say that, and I nodded along. I thought, you know what? That sounds about right to me. The Gophers, why would that be a thing? Well, LA Times, July 1st, 1989. Several possible rules violations in the University of Minnesota's men's athletic department, mostly involving former university administrator Luther Darville and the football program, are outlined in a report the school submitted to the NCAA. Darville, former acting director of the Office of Minority and Special Student Affairs, allegedly dispersed $197,897 in cash and illegal benefits to football players in 1983 to 1988. Darville, a native of the Bahamas, returned home during the investigation. Minnesota is trying to have him extradited. Oh boy. Well, by the way, Lou Holtz was involved. He was the head coach during that time.
Yeah,
not sure if he knew about it, but
I very obviously didn't. Sometimes you just got to take the L. Sometimes you do. Didn't do him much good paying that money.
That when I was cutting up clips and stuff to put on YouTube, I almost included that part, but I thought, you know what? Let's just do a quick little search just to make sure this is actually accurate. And then literally, I typed in Minnesota Gophers football 1980s paying players. And there was like 5 things that came up, and I thought this is pretty funny. So that's been, and if I probably said something stupid last week too, aside from the 13 or 31 personnel, but we'll see. We'll see if this segment comes back.
Nearly 200K during the 80s or during like the middle of the 80s. How about that?
Does that change your thoughts about anything from last week? Because you were very adamant about how, hey,
not really.
Some people were paying. Maybe everybody was paying players. Minnesota was doing it.
I mean, I could just turn it around and just say like, okay, yeah, you got a program like Minnesota tries to do it and they get in trouble. Like, there's other programs doing it who aren't getting in trouble. And that's where it's like, yeah, and if you want to talk about how it's like, oh yeah, there's, if you're going to break the rules, at least be good at it type thing. Well, I kind of feel like that's sort of beside the point, but yeah, I was wrong. Clearly. I mean, there you go. Yeah. I make a flippant comment to try to make a rhetorical point. And there you go.
See, but hey, we're going to keep things on the up and up here. We're going to, sometimes we'll have some court cases of our own, if you will. Some judgments on the show. Nobody is above the law here. There's been a lot of mess ups on the show. There's just hopefully not many more to come. There will be. There always is. That's all we have for OU football. I think I'll be remiss. By the way, it's happy birthday, America, belated. We record the day after 4th of July. Excellent time of year. And since a lot of other shows have been doing it, we're saving it for the very end. So if you're not interested, you can turn it off. But I will say, and I know you're in the same boat. I think the World Cup, precisely with the United States men's national team, I'm always interested in watching the World Cup when the USA team is playing. And of course, they have a match tomorrow on July 6th against Belgium, a rematch of the 2014 knockout round of 16. So we're same stage as I guess 12 years ago, if that's what I said. And I'm looking forward to it. Not a big soccer guy, but for whatever reason, the World Cup, when the U.S. men's national team is playing, I'm interested in. It's rare. It's a tentpole event. And it's a sport that the rest of the world loves. And it's their sport. And it's really awesome to watch the United States take certain teams down when it's not even close to our top sport. That's why I like it. And also, soccer in very small doses is not a bad watch. When it's a really high level match, the stakes are very high. It's not a terrible watch. Looking forward to the game tomorrow. The big news today, Grant, is OU. I'm in OU mode. USA striker Balogun, Flo Balogun, is going to play or is able to play, is eligible to play, which I'm sure he'll play. And it's just, I guess, I'm not an expert in soccer and FIFA, but you read tweets and reports that people will make comments about how it's FIFA kind of just making up the rules as they go. So that's quite interesting that the U.S. men's national team gets Balogun after it looked like he might not, or he wouldn't play after getting that red card against Bosnia and Herzegovina, the two countries.
Herzegovina.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That'll be on next
You're
week's
welcome.
correction segment.
Oh, I mean, I just corrected you right now. So, yeah, no, the World Cup's great. No, I have no hot takes about it. I suppose I did until the suspension was rescinded for Flo Balogun. I thought it was a really interesting. I thought that whole thing on what was that? Was that Wednesday night? Like this past Wednesday night when they beat Bosnia. I thought that whole thing was really interesting because it's been a while since I've got on my soapbox about this on this podcast, but it's definitely one of our greatest hits. I'm one of those, like, I like replay in sports. I think it should exist, but I do think there should be way more. I know, and you're already sighing, but this is the whole bit with Balogun is like symbolically my point almost exactly of just the scourge of slow motion replay. It makes everything look way worse than it actually is. And it happened when we were at, on Thursday night, we were at a bar, and it was Portugal and Croatia. That game was on, and the sound was off and everything. And so we saw them overturn that tying goal at the very end for Croatia because of some sort of, because they had some sort of technology in like a chip in the ball that they say can perceive any sort of light touch on it, even though like to the naked eye, it looked like that ball wasn't touched by the guy at all, but their technology is saying that it is. And my point always was, if it's down to like the microscopic level and it's something that's totally imperceptible to like the naked eye, what are we doing here? Like, what is that? Like, is that actually what we want in all of this? And with the Balogun stuff, it was not a foul or even a yellow card in real time. But when you slow it down to just a very, very small frames per second, you look at it's like, yeah, it looks a lot worse. But then when you play it in just regular speed, it looks like just a normal sports play where nothing bad happens at all. And we live in regular speed. We don't see in slow motion. And so I just like the whole bit about, of course it looks worse in slow. Everything looks worse in slow motion. Just ask any Hollywood director. It's like everything looks more dramatic and more and whatever in slow motion. And so I thought that was just really, really silly. He got he got the red card because he made a completely normal sports play. And because you can slow it down to that, to that many frames per second, it made it look a lot worse than it actually was. Thus resulting in what me and a lot of other people, other than sort of like kind of the lame soccer gatekeepers who are always like, oh, that's a red card in every league. And I was like, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Even, but like, I don't know. I thought the whole thing was interesting. And I'm sure like them overturning it reeks of, corruption. It obviously does, but the FIFA is extremely corrupt. They are. It's like many such stories confirming the corruptness of FIFA. It is what it is. OU again here, right? And it sounds like the U.S. It's like the U.S. If they want to be good in international soccer, you got to play the game too, and you have to like FIFA. They're corrupt. It's a lot of very, very morally compromised people making big decisions for large institutions. And just you want to win, go with it.
Yeah. With the whole replay thing, I think I still am just flummoxed by your interpretation of it. I think you're conflating things. The issue is the interpretation of whatever rules are in place. And slow motion just helps you interpret rules. I believe that in soccer, it's supposed to be a foul if you kick or you hit somebody in the back of the leg or something like he did. And that's why it was changed to a red
I don't
card.
think anybody was arguing that it like that absolutely no foul should have been called. And they also didn't follow, FIFA also didn't follow their replay guidelines. And so FIFA, in terms of replay, is actually much further ahead than, say, college football and this stuff, where you're only allowed to use screenshots and slow motion for fact-based reviews, i.e. a ball going out of bounds, somebody touching it, where like there's but for stuff like that where you're talking about I think in the rules it says like a dangerous challenge or something, they're supposed to only watch it in regular motion.
It shouldn't, but you shouldn't have rules like that's to me that's way overcomplicated, because what does the rule book say? And we're not experts in soccer, so like I'm not going to pretend to sit here and know like what the rules are. Soccer experts should know what is supposed to be a foul or a yellow card or red card or not. And from what I understood, I was watching the game Wednesday with some people that know soccer, and then you saw the videos of Messi doing a similar thing, going up the back of somebody's leg, I think earlier in the tournament, and not getting called for it. So apparently that's supposed to be some sort of a foul. And I don't know, should it get to the level of red card? I don't know how that works. So I don't think whether the replay is going normal or slow, it doesn't matter. What does the rule say and what happens?
Absolutely. How can you be so dense with this? Like with my point, it does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter at all. And the example used with the Croatian-Portugal one has nothing to do with replay. That has something to do with this weird thing with the technology in the ball. That's what that sounds like. Because if they have some sort of ball thing, that the replay part doesn't even matter that much. If the ball sensor felt something, that's the thing that you should be questioning.
Well, these are different points. My point there was that if you're changing something based off of something to the naked eye that is imperceivable, and you have to go to like this technology to see whether or not like the ball was touched. My point literally is, what are we doing here? Is that actually what we want?
Because if the rule says something like, and something that can help you see it better, you use it. It's the same idea in football where you try to figure out if the ball crosses the plane or the goal line. It happens so fast in real time. You slow it down. Oh, did the ball cross the plane? The rule is if the ball crosses the plane, it's a touchdown. All right, let's slow it down so we can actually see if it crossed the plane or not. Oh, okay, yep, it crossed the plane, touchdown.
Sure, but if you're watching that, and if you're just watching it in real time, and even when it's slowed down into slow motion, I don't know if you've watched it, it's imperceivable. It does not look like the ball touches the guy's head. It just doesn't. The ball's flight doesn't change. It doesn't and so, and and I've already said, FIFA has a history of being corrupt. They have a history of being corrupt, and it's like, and FIFA is just saying, look at this. Like, we have this technology in the ball that is saying that the ball was touched, even though we can't see it. Like, you can't blame people for being like, okay, like, show your work a little bit more. FIFA still hasn't come out. They haven't showed the entire sequence of because it's interesting, because on that Croatia example, like a guy from Portugal actually headed the ball like very shortly after, and they're not showing their data from that. It's like people have very reasonably said, hey, can we see the data? We want to see what the little thing looks like when the guy heads the ball, and they haven't done that. So
to me that's a totally different thing because of some sort of.
It is, but with the Balogun stuff,
thing.
I don't see how you don't understand that point about how when you slow it down, like, yeah, there's that screenshot of Balogun stepping on the guy's ankle and the ankle looking, and yeah, of course that looks bad, but like you can step on people in soccer. People get stepped on all the time without it being a foul.
That's things I don't know enough about the rules where like if you just watch it and you see it. Well, yeah, I mean, okay, if your argument is that if you just see one still image that's stopped, it looks bad, and that's what they're basing it off of, that's what they're calling the foul.
That is what they were basing it off of. That's what they were doing. Did you watch the guy, like the referee, so VAR or whatever, what happens is they send all of the cut-ups to the referee on the field. There was like, Fox saw it. The referee on the field was watching the slow motion cut-up of everything.
Yeah, but isn't
Like
that,
they saw
I
it. It's
think
on
that's,
TV in high
if the
definition.
rule, if you tackle or somebody behind that, it's like bad, like that's probably a foul. And they just missed it live because it happened so fast. That's the way I interpreted it. But that's the thing is, to me, if you watch it, whether it's slow motion or not, to me, it's a guy going for the ball. It's not intentional. And sure, maybe it should be a yellow card because but like it shouldn't eliminate him for an entire game. That's ridiculous. I think intent should matter, but maybe it doesn't matter in soccer. I don't know enough about the sport. Because sometimes in the NBA, intent doesn't seem to matter.
Well, we've already gotten you an NCAA hat because we know that you love the NCAA. We're gonna have to get you just a FIFA hat as well because you're always just like, oh, it's totally. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that whole thing was absolutely ridiculous.
I'm not defending him. I think it was ridiculous he got a red card because if you watch it, whether it's slow motion or not, it doesn't matter. Like just you see it happen, and he was not trying to hurt the guy. He was going for the ball. But again, I don't know enough about soccer.
That's my point.
Maybe
that's my point.
So, but he got called for the foul because
and for all of the soccer people who are like, this is a red card, this is definitely a red card, there were just as many people who were like Thierry Henry and Zlatan Ibrahimovic on Fox were both like, it was a terrible call.
Yeah. Most I
like,
saw.
Who you think they
people saying
it's like, are they not? Does their opinion not matter? I'd say it does. Like, well, yeah. And so if it's not, so like for a red card for like a guy who is going to miss the rest of the game, and you're essentially awarding a power play to the other team for the remainder of the game, and the other guy can't play the next, it better be 100%. There better be zero other interpretations of it. Like I think that's a reasonable thing to believe, to say, to.
That and then
to the people saying like that's a red card in every league in the world, that's just not true. It's already been established in the World Cup. That's not true.
Right. Like the thing with Messi, Messi happened, and then now with Balogun, I've seen reports and people acknowledging that I guess Ronaldo had a similar thing happen where FIFA just he could have potentially been out for the first 2 matches of group stage because of something he was in some international match, but FIFA just said,
yes. He was originally supposed to miss suspended for 3 games, and they ended up changing it to 1 game. So that's just, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it is an example of this smoke-filled FIFA room, unelected people just changing something else. And it's like one of those things where and I'll try to go back and relate it back to OU football, where like we'll go back to the Owen Heineke thing, where it's like I think what actually happened there with like him getting the injunction, like I think that's the just thing. I think Owen Heineke probably deserved another year just because. But also I don't, I still think that they should be allowed to enforce their rules. And like I think FIFA kind of coming back on this does, and like to the people who want to be like, this kind of stinks of corruption. Like I understand that side too. And then to bring it all, back around again to like, my superstitious mind. In my mind, now I'm thinking like, oh, this isn't good. Like I would prefer now. It's like Team USA had like some really great, like nobody believes in us ammo going into this game now with like, and I thought without Balogun, they were going to come out tomorrow night and they were going to smoke Belgium. Now I don't feel as good about it, which like, it doesn't make any sense. That's just more of like a feeling for me. Because everyone's just like, oh, sweet, we need Balogun. And it comes out and they just lay an egg. Where it's like,
yeah, I had the same feeling
it's so easy. It's so easy for me to envision that happening.
Yeah, I had the same thought too. Because I mean, USA was slight. There were slight favorites without Balogun, and now I'm sure they're probably still maybe it's improved a little bit. I'm kind of with you. It's like where is the soccer vibes and I don't know. Again, not an expert in soccer, but. Is this a just thing overall, so it shouldn't really impact, or is it one of those things where USA gets lucky even though they shouldn't have gotten Balogun back, but the superstition of it actually hurts them, and I don't know that Belgium beats them again, but I think ultimately it just comes down to what are the rules? What do the rules say? I say it all the time, and in soccer, I suppose I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you get red cards for committing reckless or dangerous tackles that endanger opponent's safety. That's one way to get a red card. I think that's probably where this fell underneath. I don't think I mean, I guess I just don't think that falls under it whenever they're both trying to go for the ball. But again, I haven't watched enough soccer. Maybe good soccer players should know to not do that. I don't know enough about the sport. I haven't watched enough of it.
And you also go, another one of the red card rubric is you get a red card for purposely stopping a scoring chance that is there. Like, and so which happened to Balogun in that game, like he was, and it absolutely prevented a goal. And so it's like, it's stuff like that. And that's an instance where VAR is supposed to see that, and they're supposed to like call in for the replay. Like, and they didn't do that there. And so they're not applying their rules evenly. They're missing stuff there. And FIFA is a very rich organization. Get your stuff together. It's not that hard. There's no way it's that hard.
I love when because soccer is a very simple sport, man. It really is. It's incredibly simple. And you don't need to get into all this stuff about the
and
they
bring up,
and
we go back to this
stuff,
but it's interesting. The offsides things is an interesting because we saw in that same Portugal and Croatia game, Cristiano Ronaldo is called offsides, and it was like, half of his face that was offsides. And that's an area where I'm just like, what are we doing here? How is that like? I think that's how the rule is written, but it's the same thing of just like, are we sure that's how you want your game to be? Because that's like, and it was so fun. It's like during that, like sort of the meme that was going around Twitter was like, someone's like, okay, how do you know when it's offsides? When every time something exciting happens, that means it's offsides. And it's like,
and then there's the offsides that happens in the box whenever there's like a scrum and something cool happens. It's like, the guy got ahead of everybody, and it's like, man, you're so close to the goal at that point. Can there be some sort of a rule where once you get past a certain point, it's just a free for all? But I know the soccer purists think this is a terrible conversation because the reason why it's just part of the game. It's part of the tactics. There's ways to try to get defenders to think one guy's going to go for a run, but then you sneak somebody else behind. It's just, I somewhat understand.
And I get all that.
I would like to see
easy.
soccer. I would like to see what soccer would look like with some tweaks to see if it would be. What if actual soccer fans actually saw tweaks and liked it even more? I don't know.
What I would say about that aspect of it though is that I do think those rules sometimes they can allow for more, because I do think where if you were a little bit more liberal with your offsides calls or whatever, I think the most skilled teams would probably never be beaten. Like they would just always be smoking like everybody. Whereas like you get the instance like, the Cape Verde Argentina game where like, Cape Verde is back on their back heels the entire game. And if offsides was much more liberally called, then I'm sure Argentina would have far more opportunity to like attack them, where I'm just like, but as like somebody who's watching the game, I don't want to watch a game that is uncompetitive. Like that's been one of like kind of the magic of this World Cup so far, is that basically like all of the games have been really competitive, even the top level teams against teams that are huge underdogs have been really close. And really like I was the game yesterday, the France and Paraguay game, where it's like, the US beat smoked Paraguay, beat them 4-1. And Paraguay can, because of the way that they play, they can sort of like park the bus and try to make it so that France just like has to work really, really hard just to have like any sort of scoring chance, which keeps the game close. Which like otherwise, where it's like if Paraguay probably actually tried to score a lot during the game, they probably just would have gotten run off the field, because they would have opened themselves up for a lot of like counterattacks and whatnot. So I don't know. I'm not a huge, like, to me, getting rid of offsides in the box is like a pretty obvious rule change for me. And also just make offsides like hockey, where it's your entire body has to be over a line for it to be offsides. But if you have any sort of your body part, like where the last defender is, then you're onsides. I think that's a pretty easy. And then, it's like, teams would change their tactics, like their strategies would change, and it would probably open up, and it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I'm pro World Cup. I think international soccer is great. I've always, ever since I first started to watch the World Cup back in 2006, I've always just really, really enjoyed it. I think it's soccer's really not my thing, but I understand soccer. I understand why it's such a big deal.
I think that'll do it for today. that'll close it up. Close up shop. Again, happy 4th of July, everyone. Happy Independence Day. Hope everyone had a nice time. Hopefully there was lots of fun and excitement with family and friends and whatnot. Maybe some sun, some pool. Make sure to follow West of Everest on Twitter, X, and Instagram. Please like the West of Everest Facebook page, and also subscribe to the West of Everest YouTube channel, rather. Follow the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and please leave us a 5-star rating and review where applicable. As we try to grow the show, your input will be incredibly helpful. We will be back next week with our next episode. Any final thoughts, Grant, before we say goodbye?
See you next week, knuckleheads.
PTI. All right. Until next week, for Grant, I'm Lee. This is West of Everest.